I'm Mark Golub, and in the news, the president announces that in roughly 6 months, the DACA program will be overturned by executive order. Of course, DACA was passed as an executive order by President Obama to enable children brought to this country illegally by their parents to work, brought to this country illegally by their parents. DACA allowed them to work, study, and remain in the United States. Now, unless Congress acts in the next 6 months to enact legislation to protect DACA children, some 700,000 to 800,000 immigrants brought to this country as minors by their parents would be subject to deportation. For many in the American Jewish community, this decision by Donald Trump is seen as heartless, a heinous act, lacking all human compassion. And it's only the latest in a string of acts Donald Trump has done that has enraged those who literally hate the man and believe he should be removed from office. And in response to Donald Trump's failure to single out neo-Nazis, the KKK, and white supremacists for the disaster in Charlottesville that led to one tragic death and many wounded, a number of major Jewish organizations have decided this year they will not participate in the annual high holiday phone conversation with the President of the United States. These organizations include the Union for Reform Judaism, the Conservative Movement's Rabbinical Assembly of America, the Religious Action Center in Washington, and the Reconstructionist Rabbinical Assembly. All have said they will in effect boycott the phone call with Donald Trump. Well, on our JBS phones now, I'm pleased to welcome to JBS Rabbi Elyse Wechterman, who is the Executive Director of the Reconstructionist Rabbinical Association. Elyse, thank you so much for joining us on JBS.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
You and I have never met. I only see a very lovely picture of you up on the screen, so it's a pleasure to meet you by phone. May I ask, when were you ordained a Reconstructionist rabbi?
I graduated from the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College in the year 2000.
And right now you're with the Rabbinical Association. Did you serve as a pulpit rabbi for any length of time?
Yes, I spent 13 years as the spiritual leader of a small congregation in southeastern Massachusetts.
Very lovely. Well, I want you to know my roots go back to the Reconstructionist movement and the SAJ. My grandfather was a colleague of Mordechai Kaplan. My bar mitzvah and my brother's bar mitzvah services were at the SAJ. So I have a very, very warm spot for Reconstructionist Judaism, and it's a real pleasure for me to talk to you here on JBS.
Thank you. What a pleasure to make your acquaintance.
Good. Okay. Elyse, I want in your words you to explain why is the Reconstructionist movement, in essence, the Rabbinical College is representing Reconstructionist Judaism. What's the point, from your perspective, of boycotting a phone call with the President of the United States?
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to answer that question. I want to clarify that we're not actually boycotting anything. This phone call is a fairly recent tradition. I'm not exactly sure when it was started, but it took place every year under President Obama, and it was a call that was initiated by us. The Religious Action Center of the Reform Movement, in partnership with the Rabbinical Associations, actually initiated the phone call, invited the president, and the president would come on the call with about 1,500 rabbis, offer his holiday greetings, and it provided an opportunity for us to ask a few questions and raise some concerns, and mostly have a sense that we were starting off of our year. As you know, we're just coming up to the high holidays, and would start our year with a sense that we were part and parcel of the religious fabric of this nation and of this country, and that our elected leaders had time for us, respected us, and wanted to wish us the best in the year ahead. President Trump through his actions, particularly his lack of actions in condemning outright anti-Semitism and racism and other hateful ideologies, has not shown himself to be someone who has the back of our community when we need it, and in other ways has really demonstrated that he is not particularly concerned about the welfare of minorities and communities in need. Of course, our community is often quite fortunate, but as we saw in Charlottesville, that can turn on a dime, and we are still experiencing anti-Semitism. And because of the heightened awareness of this disconnect between us and him at this moment, we did not feel it was appropriate to issue that invitation for this high holiday greeting call. That does not mean that we would not be open to other conversations or other opportunities to work with him and the administration about the things we care about. It just means that this did not feel like an appropriate time to have that call as a way to start our year when we really needed to be focused on the needs of our communities and the need to reassure the people that we work with that we are going to work with whoever wants to work with us on fighting oppression and hate wherever we can.
Okay. I want to ask you the obvious questions that people who obviously have some concern with your decision, they would ask you. First of all, do you suggest that everyone in the Reconstructionist movement or the Reform movement or the conservative movement, everyone sees Donald Trump the way you just described him?
No, of course not. We have a very broad diversity of folks that are parts of our community, and we are respectful of that diversity. This is a decision made by the leadership of rabbinical associations based on what we think is in the best interest of our rabbis at this moment. I know that I don't speak for every single member of my association, let alone the entire movement. I would say that the majority of the members that I serve have expressed agreement and support. And of course, there are some people who might have wished we had done it a different way, but we have not really received any feedback from our members that they are in disagreement with our decision.
Would you have supported a similar perspective from religious groups from inside the Jewish community who felt that Barack Obama, during his 8 years, had done things that were counterproductive for the state of Israel? His decision at the very end of his 8 years to permit Resolution 2334 to pass the Security Council is just an example of many of the things that that Elyse enraged American Jews. And I heard Jews tell me he's anti-Semitic, he's anti-Israel, and those comments always made me very uncomfortable. I thought one could disagree with Barack Obama on any given policy, but I thought it was sort of, excuse me, childish to call him an anti-Semite. And I would have been very disappointed if there were rabbinic groups that, because they didn't like a policy or didn't like him, decided that they were not going to talk to the President of the United States. You know, I had Dershowitz on last night. His response was, Jews have a responsibility to talk truth to power. In essence, those organizations which are aligned with your decision are giving up any opportunity to speak truth to power. And this is the presidency. I'm older than you are. I lived through many presidents. I remember what it was like to live with Richard Nixon. I remember how people felt about Ronald Reagan. I know how Jews felt about Jimmy Carter and feel about him now. But each one of them was President of the United States. And so I could see somebody saying to you, you can have your differences with Donald Trump. You can think he's the worst president this country has ever had. But why wouldn't you still want to talk to him And what does it say to, Jews all over America, at least, if not the world, if rabbis take the position, I don't like what you're saying, I'm not going to talk to you?
I think you raise a very, very good point, and we've been very, very clear from the beginning. We are not saying that we're not going to talk to the president, and have been very clear that we will continue to engage with the administration on the issues that we care about. And I agree that policy differences and differences of opinion about policy are completely legitimate, completely appropriate, and we are not of one mind, and we can have disagreements with our elected officials from dog catcher to president, and that's completely appropriate, and we still respect the office. I would say there's a big difference between a policy disagreement and the kind of carelessness that we witness in response to the level of vitriolic and, frankly, frightening displays of anti-Semitism, bigotry, and hate that we saw on display in Charlottesville. I am not calling President Trump an anti-Semite. I can't possibly know what is in his heart and what he believes. What I am saying is that his failure to call out such hatred has given comfort and provided opportunity for a type of emboldened hatred that we have not seen for a very long time. And that is something that I think we can expect better of. And again, we have simply decided not to issue an invitation for a high holiday greeting call. We have not said that we are boycotting the president. Of course not. I agree that that would be completely naive and non-productive. In fact, I called my elected officials today on a variety of issues and was in Washington, D.C. a week ago to express concern about some other issues. So I will continue to do that, as will many other rabbis, including those who disagree with me and have opposite points of view. This refusal and lack of understanding about the nature of hatred that I think we witnessed in President Trump's inability to articulate an opposition to Nazis marching in the streets is really something that we've never seen before, and is not something that I felt comfortable potentially being seen as providing cover for, or providing an opportunity for the president to say that everything was okay between him and the Jewish community. And I was afraid that the phone call might have been used to provide such cover, and that actually seemed to me to be more potentially damaging than not issuing the invitation for the phone call.
Okay. I understand you're trying to make a subtle difference between a phone call on the high holidays and a phone call in general. I don't know that in general there are phone calls from the Jewish community to the president. I do know that a pattern was established, and it is significant. It doesn't go unnoticed that this year major Jewish institutions are not engaging the president around the high holidays. By the way, there were things that even Barack Obama, but presidents over the years that I have seen, have come out and said something that was uncomfortable. I was not happy. And they then corrected themselves. And while I wish they had said it earlier, I thought the correction was important. I also feel that there's something very Jewish about that. People do make mistakes. And the question is, how do they respond after the mistake? Donald Trump...
Yes, I think you're absolutely right.
I'm almost done. Donald Trump does come out unequivocally condemning neo-Nazis, KKK, and white supremacists. Yes, he did not say it in his initial response, and I noticed it just as you did. But for whatever reason, and I don't know, you said I don't know what's in Donald Trump's heart. I don't either. But I'm certainly willing to give him the benefit of the same doubts I've given other presidents. He comes out roughly 24 hours later, and he is eloquent. It could have been Barack Obama speaking. He said everything I wanted him to say, and he was unequivocal in his condemnation of those that you wished he had singled out. I don't understand why that doesn't matter to you.
I think we might have to agree to disagree on the nature of unequivocal and clear condemnation. I did not see a deep understanding of what the vicious display of hatred meant to this country and to the members of our community who are in their homes and frightened. I did not see a deep understanding of that.
Oh, okay.
Should President, and we'll have to agree to disagree. Should President Trump want to engage with me in a conversation, or any of our leaders in a conversation about what anti-Semitism means, what it looks like, how it feels, how it functions in this community and in this country, its history, I would gladly have that conversation with him. I think the process that you're talking about, the process of tshuva, requires a deep level of engagement and study, and a sincere desire to learn more about the people that you've wronged. And I would gladly accept that and gladly engage in that process with the president or anybody who wanted to have that conversation. I haven't seen it at this point.
Okay,
that
that's
doesn't mean
fair
it can't
enough.
happen.
That's
but
fair enough.
I haven't seen it.
Okay. I want, you're on the phone.
You're not going to get a rise out of me.
I don't know. I don't want to rise. I think you are eloquent. And I have questions, but you answer them very, very well. I want you're going to hear, unfortunately you can't see at the moment, but I'm going to play at the moment what Trump said on the Monday following Charlottesville. And then I want you to tell me again, you don't hear from him a condemnation. You'll listen, we'll watch. Sloan, let me see the president speaking on Monday.
I just met with FBI Director Christopher Wray and Attorney General Jeff Sessions. The Department of Justice has opened a civil rights investigation into the deadly car attack that killed one innocent American and wounded 20 others. To anyone who acted criminally in this weekend's racist violence, you will be held fully accountable. Justice will be delivered. As I said on Saturday, we condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. It has no place in America. And as I have said many times before, no matter the color of our skin, we all live under the same laws. We all salute the same great flag. And we are all made by the same Almighty God. We must love each other, show affection for each other, and unite together in condemnation of hatred, bigotry, and violence. We must rediscover the bonds of love and loyalty that bring us together as Americans. Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans. We are a nation founded on the truth that all of us are created equal. We are equal in the eyes of our Creator. We are equal under the law, and we are equal under our Constitution.
Okay, Elyse, we may, again, as you said, we may agree to disagree. If I didn't know that was Donald Trump, I would have thought it was Barack Obama. He said every single thing I wanted him to say. How do you respond when he talks about how repugnant KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists are, that they are? He condemns them. It was egregious, and he speaks about coming together in a way that, again, I would have been proud for Barack Obama to say. What did you hear there?
Can you play what he says the next day on Tuesday morning?
I don't have what he said Tuesday morning. What did he say on Tuesday morning?
Well, can your producer pull it up?
No.
Oh, okay. So, the next day, I think that what he said the right words in that speech. He said the right words, but he doubled down the next day on the notion that there were some, fine people among the people who were there to have a white supremacist march. He doubled down on the both sides causing, having bad people on both sides. He doubled down on that the next day. And frankly, what we heard on Sunday morning and what we heard on Tuesday morning were much more President Trump speaking from himself. And what I heard there was a very nicely prepared set of remarks that someone wrote for him that he read. Now, you're asking me to judge one and not the other without the context of the others. I can't do that. I was completely destroyed and distraught myself by what I saw. I can't take this out of the context of the other two. So in order to make a judgment, I think you have to put the other two side by side with this particular speech.
Okay. I appreciate what you're saying, and I understand what you're saying. Again, what people have said to me is that what Donald Trump was referring to was not that he thought there were some good people who were Nazis, KKK, or white supremacists. That what he was saying was there are people in America who are good people who don't think they should have taken down a statue of Robert E. Lee. If that's what he meant, even if my sense is we're not dealing with a sophisticated communicator. That's one of the that's one of the problems with Donald Trump as president. And when I hear that kind of criticism, I believe that is warranted. That's worthy of discussion. There are real deficiencies to Donald Trump because he wasn't prepared. He didn't spend a lifetime preparing. And everybody is still in shock that Donald Trump is president of the United States. It's as if a guy at a bar became president of the United States because people liked the way he spoke. But he is president, and I don't believe he's a bad man. And when I talk to people, I can't find anybody who knows him who tells me he's a bad man. Do I think he is sophisticated, as you and I want him to be? No. Do I think he speaks sometimes and is just silly? Yes. But that's not the issue. You see him as, and I talk to Jews all the time who agree with you, Elyse, you see him as demonic. And I see him as sort of just an unsophisticated person who, for very good reasons, was elected president of the United States, very few having to do with him. And so when he speaks, he often speaks in, again, like a guy at a bar speaks. But it's not that he was saying there are some good people among Nazis. He's not saying there were some good people in the KKK or white supremacists. He was saying that there were some good people who didn't like the fact that they were going to take down a statue of Robert E. Lee, and I hear that all the time from good people. Mm-hmm. And he was also saying there was violence on both sides. And what we have seen in the last week from Antifa has made my blood curl. And I want Jews on the left to be as critical of Antifa as we are critical of white supremacists, KKK, and neo-Nazis.
Well, I will gladly be critical of violence, and I will gladly be critical of Antifa. I won't be critical of them in the same way as I am critical of neo-Nazis and white supremacists, because I think they're profoundly different entities. One is an ideology and a hierarchy and a history and an infrastructure of hate that has been emboldened and increasingly public. It has unfortunately been a part of our country throughout its entire history, but in recent years, and I would say since the election of Donald Trump, for a variety of complicated reasons having to do with that election, has become newly emboldened. But we were talking about a systematized, organized, structured, funded, and deeply planful campaign of hatred that has as its goal to create a racially based racist society. That I'm going to condemn and argue against in an entirely different way than I will argue against, which I will also argue against, but in an entirely different way, the unfortunate, foolish, and I think misguided attempts to counter that with equally heinous violence. So I will absolutely condemn the violence of Antifa, and I will absolutely condemn the violence of the alt-right, but I will condemn further the ideology, the system, and the structure of white supremacy far more and far more vociferously over the months, because I think that in the long run they are far more dangerous to this country and to this country's fabric.
Okay.
We
By
can
the way,
disagree about the specifics, but you will not hear me in any way support the violent activities of Antifa.
Okay, good for you about it. You are eloquent and you say it beautifully, and our disagreement is subtle, not gross. I do feel, and Elyse, I'm acknowledging I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'll be sorry that I'm wrong. I have been influenced by those who tell me the number of neo-Nazis in America is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. But those who are representing Antifa and the far left, who are not only creating violence, but are part of a move to literally delegitimize the state of Israel, as far as the Jewish community is concerned, is a far greater threat and should be a far greater concern. But I want to tell you,
you're compounding a significant number of various and disparate issues, and we can address each of them. I don't actually believe that they all belong together in the same conversation.
Okay. You are wonderful. I hope you'll let me call you again. I appreciate what you're doing on the Jewish scene. And I'll say this again. You are articulate, and you're passionate, and you're well-spoken, and you're thoughtful. And we need more rabbis like you, Elyse. Thank you so much for being part of JBS.
Thank you, and let me wish you and your listeners a Shana Tova, a very happy and healthy new year for everyone. Let us pray that the coming year brings us more justice and more peace for everybody all around the world.
Amen v'amen, gam lach. Thank you very, very much, Elyse. The thoughts of Rabbi Elyse Wechterman, Executive Director of the Reconstructionist Rabbinical Association, which again you heard is not participating in a phone call with the president for the holidays this year. If you watch JBS often, you've heard me before. I tend to take a moderate position on issues like this. I understand that people really feel Donald Trump is the worst thing that's ever happened to America, and there's a visceral hatred for the man, which I hear from Jews all the time. I've said repeatedly, I think there can be valid criticisms of the Trump presidency as there were valid criticisms of the Obama presidency. But I also remember the admonition of Alan Dershowitz, don't make the president the enemy. I find it both counterproductive, even undermining of Jewish values, for Jewish leaders to say, we're not going to talk with the President of the United States. Since when did Jews stop talking with those with whom we disagree? What message does that send? And really, organized Jewish leadership wants to say that Donald Trump is so bad, we won't even talk to him on the high holidays? By the way, Jews will talk to Yasser Arafat. Jews will talk to Mahmoud Abbas. But we won't talk to Donald Trump. I find this approach to be short-sighted, counterproductive, and quite honestly, a betrayal of the teachings of Torah. Those are my views. I'd love to know yours. Please email me, write me, post on our Facebook page, or even tweet me. I'd be happy to hear your thoughts. As always, my thanks to our director, Sloan Copeland, production coordinator, Serge Goldberg, JBS's associate director, Dara Golub, editors, John McDevitt and Cordelia Siporin, and to the producer of In the News, Carol Lilienthal. It is wonderful to have Carol back. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.